Hey guys, Josh Culler here, the host of the Good Success Podcast. Hey, I'm just dropping in here to let you know that we are giving a free book away. Yes, a free book called Active Turnkey, The Best Way to Buy Rentals by Tom Olson himself, the president of Good Success. Yes, I did say we are giving it away for free. All you got to do is go to goodsuccess.com/ATKbook. Again, that's goodsuccess.com/ATKbook. as an active turnkey. And we're going to cover the book. So we're going to actually pay for the book and give it to you for free. We're just asking you to cover shipping costs, which is very minimal compared to the value that you're going to be getting in the book. So if you are interested in learning how to create financial freedom with real estate, go get your copy now. Again, that is goodsuccess.com/ATKbook. Thank you for listening to the Good Success Podcast, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the Good Success Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Culler, and today we have out of Denver/Thornton, Colorado, Marc Cunningham. What is going on, Marc? How you doing?
I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Man, that's awesome. He's got some Shekinah. If you guys are watching the actual video on Facebook right now, he's got a little bit of Shekinah glory coming in behind him. So I don't know if he planned that or not, but it just makes him look so angelic.
This is the benefit of working from my home office.
There you go.
Home on Fridays, so that's the benefit
Awesome.
right there.
There you go. So you just get a nice bright sunshine coming through right behind you. Hey, it all works out. But Marc is, so a couple things about Marc. So he actually is the president of Grace Property Management and Real Estate. And this company has been in business since 1978. Way before I was born, Marc.
I can tell.
So I'm going to have him talk about that a little bit. And then, so they have over 700 properties in management. I'm sure that number has changed too. But Marc is actually the winner of the Think Realty Property Manager of the Year award. So congratulations on that. That's pretty awesome. So I believe that's where you met Tom Olson at the Think Realty event in Atlanta, where Tom won the Single Family Investor of the Year award. So again, Marc is the winner of the Property Manager of the Year. There's a lot of property managers out there. A lot of people could have won this award, but Marc got it, and so that's absolutely fantastic. Congratulations on that. Think Realty is very, very good friends of ours. And so that's fantastic. So again, that is how we met Marc. So I actually got on the phone with Marc. Marc's going to be checking out our mastermind here in February. Not able to make it to this one. That's sad, but totally understandable because it's coming up so fast. But hopefully we see him in February. So that would be great. But we're going to come back around to Marc, have him fully introduce himself. And then we got some awesome questions about, we're going to kind of keep this specifically on property management. So if you guys are, property managers, there's a lot that you can learn from Marc here. So make sure you guys stay tuned. So before we get into it, if you guys have not already, make sure you have subscribed to the Good Success Podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, all the podcast platforms. Just go to the podcast platform, search Good Success, subscribe there. And then if you are able to, leave a review. I believe Apple Podcasts may be the only platform that you can leave a review. So make sure you guys do that, and we would appreciate it. We'd love to hear your thoughts on how the podcast is for you. And then, so we have the Active Turnkey book. We talk about this a lot, but written by Tom Olson himself, president of Good Success. I have it right here in my hands, and this is absolutely free. So you guys can get this book for free. All you have to do is go to atkbook.com to go check that out. It was a little bit of a longer URL. We used to have you go to goodsuccess.com/ATKbook. We're like, let's just make it easier. atkbook.com is where you can pick this up for free. All you got to do is cover shipping costs, and we're going to get this out to you. Tom is going to pay for the book himself. It's an awesome book. I think this one might be signed by him. Emily, I don't have a signed one by him. I don't know where the stack is, but actually I think it's back there, but this one is assigned. We'll have to make a note to get this signed by Tom. So he's signing all these books that are going out, so make sure you guys take advantage of that. Talks about Active Turnkey, the best way to buy rentals. So make sure you take advantage of that. atkbook.com is where you can pick up yours. Just cover shipping costs, and we'll get that out to you. And then the Good Success Mastermind. Oh my goodness, the November event is coming up next week. November 8, 9, and 10 is the next event. We're pretty much shutting down signups right now unless somebody is local to the actual Florida, Miami area. You might be able to join up on that. But our next event is February 6, 7, and 8. And that's what it is right now. I say right now because we are on the cusp. We are on a bubble right now of going to a full week for the mastermind and splitting the group into two. So right now it's February 6th, 7th, and 8th. If you are interested, you can go to goodsuccess.com/mastermind to learn more about us. We have you fill out an application, go through that process, and then you get on the phone with myself or Tom Olson, president of Good Success, and we'll see if that's a good fit for you and a good fit for us. And then you guys can come try it out. So again, that's goodsuccess.com/mastermind. We have those events quarterly, so make sure you check that out. And then early bird pricing for the Community Go Giver event is going on right now. Save a couple $100. Go to communitygogiver.com. All these are going to be linked below, and we are actually working on show notes right now. Emily's monitoring the camera, and she's doing a fantastic job on it. So show notes are coming out pretty soon. You guys be on the lookout for that. A lot of good resources to actually pull from that. It's going to look awesome. She's already done a couple of mock-ups, so I'm excited about it because now I can just say, go to the show notes. That's so much easier than saying type this into your browser. But anyway, communitygogiver.com is where you can save a couple $100 for the Community Go Giver event. Make sure you take advantage of that. And that is it. So without further ado, Mark, I am going to stop talking here. I always have to go through our whole spiel, talk about our stuff and all that, but we're going to get into this show today. I have some awesome questions for you, some things that we're going to dive really deep into property management and just pick your brain about all this stuff, the Think Realty Property Manager of the Year. So without further ado, Mark, do me a favor. For the people that don't know who you are, introduction of who you are, what you do, how long you've been doing it. Give us a little bit of background about Grace Property Management and introduction.
Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you again for having me. In 1978, it's actually 40 years ago this last month. If we could get in the time machine and go back, step out, we'd find that interest rates to buy a house were about 16%. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Carter's in year number 2 of his presidency. The Bee Gees have the number 1 hit song on the radio. So, and at that same time,
wait, what song was that?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that. I'm too young. I don't know. I'm too young.
Oh, you're saying, okay.
I just know they did. All right. You look that up.
Okay.
So at that same point in time, my dad, who'd been a school teacher, decided that dealing with junior high kids was a great segue into selling real estate, dealing with buyers and sellers. And so he opened up Grace Property Management Real Estate, small little property management company in Denver at that point in time. So I was employee number 1 because I was free child labor. So my dad had me doing everything a kid probably should not do in the business and the real estate world, but he'd have me showing properties and collecting rents and painting doors and mowing lawns and anything that needed to be done. So I really grew up in that world, in that space, and worked for my dad's during the summers as I got older and just doing whatever needed to be done around the office. And it was fun because it gave me a unique view into real estate, into property management, and into running a business, really. So I went to Colorado State University, studied finance and real estate, and I graduated from there. I was working up in the beautiful area of Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Awesome.
Ever been to Cheyenne, Wyoming?
Oh, yeah.
It's not the end of the world, but it's like across the street.
Yeah.
And so my dad called me one day and said, hey, I need to hire a property manager, real estate agent, job's yours if you want it. So I jumped at that opportunity. That was about 20 years ago. So we've grown slow and steady since then. So today we've got a team of about 800 folks. We do property management. We do real estate sales. We buy ourselves. So I'm an investor myself. We buy and hold. We flip. We do residential. We do commercial. With our team of 20, we manage 850 roughly doors. Our mantra is to follow the opportunity. So that's kind of what we do on a daily basis within our business that from that standpoint. So my dad's still somewhat active in the business, does some of our commercial leasing and property management, and he's our CEO. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis is kind of help out within that framework. I'm the president of the company there. But then that's kind of turned into some other opportunities. So I'm an investor myself as well. As I mentioned, I own some real estate. And then I do quite a bit of traveling and speaking to real estate property management groups, talking to real estate investors about things to look for to buy, how to do property management. And then that's kind of turned into then training property managers on how to have a successful property management business. So we're just always trying to keep our head open to new ideas, and it takes us in a lot of fun directions.
Man, you are a very busy person. I think that's safe to say. So you started in real estate from a very young age. Like that was like your bread and butter from.
I'm 45, and people say, "How many years have you been in real estate?" I say 45 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. So, question about the property management company. So obviously you guys have a lot going on. where does Grace stretch to? Like, what markets are you guys in? Is it specifically just Colorado, or is it other multiple states, or can you
We're just in Colorado.
Okay.
We're just in Colorado. Our office is in the Denver area. So we manage and do real estate just in the Colorado market. We go, if you know Colorado at all, we kind of goes north is Fort Collins area, and the south is Colorado Springs area. So we've got a pretty big footprint within the Denver area, but no, we've not expanded beyond the Colorado market.
Well, I think that's really incredible, and that's not even actually one of my questions here. But so why have you guys chosen to just stick with that one market right there in this kind of this central region of Colorado and not go out any other markets or anything? Like, you guys have established yourself there, and you're obviously, I mean, you said 850 units, I believe. That's incredible. So why'd you guys choose to just stay niched in that one market right there and not go outside any other?
So the reason we've really decided to stay in the Colorado market is simply because every state is so different and unique as it relates to regulations, rules to be followed for property management, because every state is regulated by a real estate commission, and every state's a little bit different. So that's the reason we've decided not to kind of pull the trigger on another state. And it's becoming more and more popular for PM companies to expand into other states. We've been asked if we will do that, but at this point, we're having enough fun, and there's enough to keep us busy right here in this market.
I'm sure. Yeah, that. Like you said, a lot of property management companies are trying to expand into other markets, and to each his own. But yeah, I'm just curious about why you guys decided to stay in that one market. From the looks of things, it doesn't look like there's a right or wrong. It just depends on what you like to do and what you feel comfortable with. But I think that's awesome.
And I'm kind of we're kind of control freaks.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
If we were to expand into another market, we'd have to really kind of let that go. And we just have enough going on right now. Yeah.
You'd have to establish boots on the ground wherever you're at and all that. So yeah, because our property management company, Olson Property Services, is niched in our market, in the Northwest Indiana market, and we don't go outside anywhere else. So, all right, cool. Yes. I just wanted to check into that. So, okay. So let's get into some questions then. So that was a side trail there. I just wanted to squeeze that little question in there. So Grace Property Management and Real Estate is the name of your guys' business. Now, obviously your dad is the one that started that. Why the word Grace? That's very intriguing to us because, I know the answer to this because we've talked about this on the phone, but, it's very intriguing to us because it's along the lines of, faith, in God and all that. So for us, Good Success, we pulled that straight from the Bible. So Grace, why was that chosen for the company's name?
Yeah. My dad, when he started the company, he always said, it's by the grace of God, I can have a real estate and property management company. And so those are kind of the principles we're going to operate under. And we always have. It's worked very, very well. In the way we work. So we try to keep those foundational aspects in place for our firm. So it's something that, we're not overtly religious. We don't only go out and look to hire people who agree with us from that standpoint, but those are the principles we operate under. And so it's worked well. Every once in a great while, we'll get that thrown in our face, right? Mm-hmm. We'll be evicting a tenant for non-payment of rent, and we'll get and you call yourself Grace Management. So but it keeps us on our toes.
Oh, I'm sure. And totally agree with that. I think that is very interesting. And the reason why I wanted to ask that question is because, we're not ashamed of that. Like even our mastermind, when you come visit, you'll see like almost everybody in the room. We're not a Christian only mastermind, but that's kind of the culture that we've developed. That's kind of the culture of the type of people that we attract. And we're not ashamed of that. And yes, that has gotten thrown in our face as well. But at the same time, like you just, you have to be okay with that coming at you. Sure. And I love the fact that your dad started, named it that for that specific reason. We had Pedro Adeo on a couple months ago, and he's a really big influencer with the 100X Academy. And he's an influencer for Christians. He talks about kingdom entrepreneurship and building your business and not sprinkling he used the term sprinkling little God flakes on your business, and just kind of trying to include God there. Your dad started the company because it's by the grace of God, and that's what he named it. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. A lesson to learn for those Christian business owners out there, and something to think about. So that's awesome.
And we absolutely can attribute a lot of our long-term success to that. I mean,
Yeah.
when we look back at some of the things that have happened, it's really hard to deny that there has been that aspect that's really progressed us to where we are today.
Sure. Absolutely fantastic. So then the next thing is, so let's dive deep into property management. I brought you on the show here, understanding, you guys are very, very niche in property management. You know it inside and out. You guys even teach it. So when it comes to building a property management team, and I shot you these questions before we even jumped on the podcast here, and you asked me, is this what to look for in a property management team from an investor standpoint, or actually building the team internally? So let's start with building the team internally. When somebody has a property management company, what are some things that they need to be on the lookout for?
So if you've got a PM company, so I'm talking to PM company owners right now, right? And I do a lot of PM coaching. Sorry for the dog in the background there.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's the home office side.
Yeah, home office. Hey, it's
right.
It's real. It's happening.
It's the price you pay for working from home. So when we're building PM companies, the PM business is tough. It's a difficult business to succeed in because we're stuck in the middle, right? We've got tenants on one side who think we don't fix enough, and we've got owners on the other side who think we spend too much of their money. I mean, that's what a lot of it boils down to from that side of things. So we're always walking that fine line of representing the owner client and ensuring that the tenant is well taken care of and keeping it fair between the two of them. So when we build a property management company, that's a frustration for a lot of PMs is, man, I feel trapped. I feel stuck. Like how do I navigate those two sides and still make a profit? Because it's not a profitable business from looking from the outside in. Owner investors will say, man, you guys charge a lot. Well, do we? When you think about what you're paying a PM company to do and the liability and the risk they're taking, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to know. You got to know the rules. You got to know the laws. You got to keep the tenants happy. You got to do the accounting side of things. You got to ensure that you're within fair housing guidelines kind of thing. So really, I think it comes down to having strong systems in place. You've got to have a systematized process or else you'll drive yourself crazy. If you're treating every tenant differently, you're going to drive yourself crazy. If you've got different leases in place, you'll go nuts. So you've got to have a very strong system in place. Think of the McDonald's idea of you've got a handful of things you can choose from on their menu, and they can pull a kid off the street and they can teach him how to make a hamburger the same way every time for every person whatever McDonald's they're at. Now, it may not be the best hamburger, but
it's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah.
It's a consistent product. So that idea of building a PM company, you've got to build consistency into it, I think is a process standpoint.
So then that plays into that. That's extremely valuable for the investor side. So let's talk about the investor, because when they're choosing a property management company for somebody to manage their assets, that's their gold right there, is the assets that they have.
Yes.
And they have to trust that property manager, that property management company with those assets, because that's their income. That's another stream of income for them. So obviously it's extremely valuable. So from that point of view, what does an investor need to be looking for with a property management team? Maybe it's the same answer, but what do they need to be looking for?
That it's one of the most important aspects of that, right? Because if you own real estate, if you get a bad tenant or a string of bad tenants, it's going to kill your investment.
Mm-hmm.
The income, it comes from the tenant. The tenant is the asset. The tenant's the one paying the rent. So finding good tenants, taking care of good tenants, ensuring the property is maintained, whether you're doing it yourself as an investor or hiring a property management company, I think is like the paramount aspect type of a thing. So I think the first question an investor has to ask is, do I want to self-manage? And for some investors, yes, some investors will call us up and we'll have a conversation. We'll say, you know what? You shouldn't hire us. You need to manage this thing yourself. You want to be very, very involved, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need us. You can do this yourself. But I think the questions we always ask of investors, there are three things. Number one, do you have the time to manage it yourself? Because you have to be able to devote the time to the tenant, right? If it's vacant and a tenant calls and wants to see it today at 2:00, you better be able to be there today at 2:00 to show it. So you've got to have the time. Number two, you've got to have the temperament. And this is a big one because for most investors, take the typical investor, nice person, nice guy, nice gal. They want to be kind. They want to be kind to their tenant, which then turns into calls that we get all the time. Hey, I've been self-managing my own property and they haven't paid me rent in the last 3 months. And I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do. Now I want to hire you guys to come in and be the bad guy. And we can do that, but they shouldn't have let it have gotten to that point. Right? You've got to have the temperament to treat it like a business, because it's a business. So if you don't have that temperament, then you may not be a good candidate to self-manage. And then the third piece of that is you've got to have the knowledge or the education. You've got to know the rules and laws of your state, of your municipality, as it relates to HUD, as it relates to fair housing, as it relates to leases, security deposit returns. There's just so many places that you can trip up, and not even meaning to, and really get yourself in trouble by doing something wrong in that space. So if you've got the time, you've got the temperament, and you've got the knowledge, then do it yourself. If you don't, that's when you want to look at hiring a PM company. And so what we tell folks to do is, as you're interviewing PM companies, and we encourage folks to interview a lot of PM companies, but there's a few pointed questions you can really ask to, I think, determine if it's going to be a good fit. And we tell our clients that's what you're looking for. You're looking for fit. It's got to be a good fit. So you want to have, and you said this earlier a minute ago, you've got to have trust. You've got to trust them, because you are giving them the keys to the front door of your most valuable asset.
Yep.
So if you don't trust them, man, run away, right? And how do you establish that? A couple things. We encourage clients to go online and read every Google review, and go to the BBB sites and read about that, and go to the real estate commission, because every real estate commission also has a public domain where if a complaint has been filed through the real estate commission, that'll be registered. So if you do that, if you just do that alone, you're going to get a good idea as to that company, because Google reviews are not something we can control, right? If we do a security deposit return and the tenant feels we've cheated them, first thing they're doing is they're going to jump on Google and
let
say
everybody know
how terrible we are, right? Yeah. So read those, because we can't control those. So do a Google review, do a BBB review, go to your state Department of Regulatory Agency site, do your research on the company there. If you determine from that standpoint that company is legit, then I think the second most important question to ask that company is, okay, Mr. PM company, if I start doing business with you and I change my mind 2 months in, how can I get out? And that's one of the biggest problems I see, because a lot of PM companies, they really want to lock people into doing business with them, and they get them tied in, and they never want to let them go. And I understand that mentality, but it's wrong.
Right.
It's not good business, right? So for example, if someone does business with us, we have a month-to-month property management agreement. And what that means, so if you're considering hiring us, and what I say to you is, gosh, we could be the best company in town. We could be the worst company in town. You really don't know at the end of the day. So one thing we want to do to make you comfortable is, if you do business with us and you change your mind tomorrow, not a problem. Drop me an email, terminate the agreement. There's no termination fees. There's no penalties, because we want to believe in earning your business every day. Right? That's what we've done for 40 years. So whatever company you're talking to, if they're not willing to say that, that's a big red flag to me. If they're going to say, well, it's a 12-month agreement, and if you leave at all early, we're going to have this big termination fee, we're going to have a big penalty, that just tells me they don't trust themselves to provide a high level of service. So I think that's the other important question to ask is, if I want out, what do I have to do to get out, and what's it going to cost me?
So for a property management company, do you see that being like a standard procedure, is for them to lock them in for a year?
Yes, absolutely. At least a year. Yeah.
And you're saying don't do that, because you got to trust your own business.
Right. I speak to property managers, right? And so I'll go into a room of 100 PMs, and I'll say, question, guys. I'm talking to property managers now, right? I'll say, what is the ideal length of term of the management agreement you want to have in place between you as the PM company and your owner client? Just like holler it out. What are some terms? And people will be like, at least a year. 2 I had one guy, he's like, 50 years. The longer the better. We want to lock them in, get them in. and so then I kind of say, I get that, but let me tell you why I don't think you want that. Let me tell you why our agreement's month to month. And then they all look at me like I'm an idiot, because they say, well,
but it's worked for you.
It's worked. And they'll say, well, the risk is someone will hire you, you do all the hard work, and then they fire you. I say, yeah, that's a risk, but it doesn't happen, right? And people aren't going to typically do that. But as an owner, ask that question.
So for you as a property manager, do you vet your investors as well to see if they're that person that's going to take advantage of what you just mentioned?
Yes, absolutely. So before we got on the phone today, I had a couple coaching calls, and 3 of my calls today were an hour-long sessions on exactly that. It was a PM guy saying this, hey, I look up and I'm working with all these owners who are really difficult. How could I have vetted them? What should I have done? So that's what we talked about. So that's a big problem within the PM industry, is vetting owners. Because from our perspective, right, we get a lead on the phone. We get a hot lead. Right. Well, what do you want to do? You want to close the lead down.
Yeah.
You want to get them signed up. And so what we as property managers need to do is slow down and make sure that just like we are a good fit for them, that they're a good fit for us. Because not every client is a good client for us. And so what that means is if they're going to be very, very involved, if they're going to be overly active, if they're going to be mistrusting, if they expect us to call them every day with updates, it's just not going to be a good fit. And there's nothing wrong with them, but they've got to fit our system. So we ask some questions of them. You'll probably enjoy this, and I'm kind of giving away the secrets here, right? So,
Hey.
So for example, we've got a questionnaire. So if you called me as a new prospective owner, I'd ask you some basic questions, the straightforward stuff. Tell me about you, your property. What are you looking to get out of property management? Well, at the end of that questionnaire, I'm going to have 4 internal questions that I have to answer internally before I will allow myself to work with you. And the number 1 question is the owner financially stable? Right. So if you say to me, hey, Mark, if you don't get this property rented in 3 weeks, I can't make my mortgage payment. I'm going to determine, you know what? I probably don't want to work with you as an owner client because I may not have it rented in 3 weeks.
Right.
Or what are you going to say when I call you up and say, hey, bad news, hot water heater went out. I need $1,200. I mean, that call is going to happen eventually. So number 1, are you financially stable? Number 2, are you emotionally stable? Now, I think you are thus far, but I don't know how many cats you own, right? So if you own more than 2 cats, I know that you're not quite. My apologies to all the cat owners.
Yeah.
Joke. Hopefully they get
no
it.
offense to cat owners.
Offense to cat owners, but we've got to glean that information, right? I mean, if they're kind of herky jerky and they're all over the place, that's not going to be a good fit. And number 3 is, are they willing to give me control? Because I say to my clients, look, when you give me the keys to your house, you have to be giving me control. You've got to acknowledge that. You've got to be okay with that. And if you're going to try to micromanage the process, it's just not going to work. If you want to be involved in the tenant selection and you want to meet the applicants, not going to be a good fit. So
Sure.
Are you financially stable? Are you emotionally stable? Are you willing to give me control? And do you have realistic expectations? So those are the 4 questions I'm asking of you without actually asking you. And unless I can check the yes box on those 4, like in my office, unless the PM can check the yes box on those, they're not allowed to work with that client. I know how the story will end.
Yeah. And property managers have to be okay with letting that go, letting somebody go, because it's going to be worse for you if you accept that investor and they are like on the property all the time and wanting to control everything. Totally agree. And we do that for our mastermind too. Like when we had talked about the mastermind with you, I got on the phone with you, and one of the first things I said was, the reason I'm on the phone with you right now is because I want to make sure that it's a good fit for you, but it's also a good fit for us, because we don't want to bring somebody in the room that doesn't have the type of culture that we developed, and that it's a waste of time for them. It's a waste of time for us. It's just, and I feel like that's a good business principle, not just for property management, but for business across the board. So absolutely love that. And so let's segue into another question that we have here, dealing with all that we just talked about, from an investor vetting a property management company and a property management company and vetting an investor, because I'm personally not in property management, but I have heard a lot of people talk about property management and teach it and how to do things right and that kind of thing. And that's one of the first times I've ever heard about a property manager vetting an investor, because most of the time they just take it because it's business. So I love that. So let's talk about the relationship between the property management and the investor. Why is it so important for property managers and investors to have a good relationship with each other, and how do they actually build that relationship?
Yeah, so they've got to trust each other, right? So let's pretend that you're interviewing me and I'm interviewing you as well from that standpoint, and I decide, yep, I think that this will be a good relationship, and so we start working together. For those investor clients, to ensure the relationship's going to be solid on the front end, what I recommend they do is have a little micromanagement on the front end. Right. So in other words, when you get that first month's operating statement and it shows all the financials, you, Mr. Owner, what you want to do is you want to either drop an email or make a phone call to your PM company and ask a question. Doesn't matter what the question is. Make up a question. Hey, on the 3rd line down in the paragraph 7, it says that I was charged $8 for a rekey invoice. Can you explain that to me? And the only reason you're doing that is to let the PM company know that you're actually looking at the numbers. Right. I mean, we're an honest company. We do all the numbers correctly for everybody. But I'll tell you, when I know owners are going to scrutinize that statement, then I give that statement extra scrutiny first. Make sure we didn't make any mistakes, kind of a thing. So let the PM company know that you're watching. that you're looking at those numbers, and do that periodically. Pick up the phone periodically to ask questions about the numbers, because that's going to make the PM company know that you're watching, kind of a thing. And if you ever suspect that there is something going on, then do not wait on that. Most PM companies are honest, but you hear these horror stories about PM companies running off with all the tenant security deposits and closing up and just running off. So, and that's not something you can really vet on the front end, other than to keep tabs on that and watch for red flags. If you're getting your rent late, that's a red flag. You need to call that PM company and find out what's going on. But once that relationship is established, then PM or then owner, you kind of need to let the PM company do their job. Because if it continues to where, hey, you're calling me every week and with questions, I just can't operate that way. It's not going to be a good fit. So you've got to give that PM company some freedom and flexibility to do what they do. And when you find that trusting relationship, man, that's gold. You've got to hold on to that for dear life.
Sure thing. And I even think I would go as far as saying that property managers need to listen to all that stuff that you just mentioned too, because if the property manager is doing their job correctly and going through and seeing that line item is something that's scrutinized in the actual, anything. So if they get a list back, like hot water heater broke. Okay, why did that break? Let's solve that. Let's get in touch with the investor right now. Let them know what's going on with this, instead of the investor getting the bill for that. And then they're like, hey, what's going on? So why is that? Go into that a little bit from a property management standpoint. How can they build the relationship with the investor?
So I think the property manager has to do first and foremost is set expectations. You've got to set the expectations with, for example, on that level of communication on the hot water heater. So for example, we say to our owner clients, so Mr. Owner Client, here's the deal. We will call you on maintenance issues, but we have a dollar threshold. It's typically like $500, right? Mm-hmm. So we are authorized to spend $500 of your money, and we're not going to call you and ask for permission. And the reason we're going to do that is because if something breaks, you're hiring us for our judgment. What we're not going to do is call you and say, hey, Mr. Owner, the kitchen sink is leaking. What do you think we should do?
Yeah.
That's a wasted conversation, right? And you're going to say, well, gosh, maybe we should get a couple bids. That's what you hire us to do, right? So we're going to get it fixed. And in a worst case scenario, the hot water heater is going to go out at some point. I always ask an owner, I'll say, so how old's your hot water heater? It's 5 years old. Okay, well, the bad news is in the next 6 years, it will go out. And in Colorado, to replace a hot water heater, we got some new rules and regs in place. It's going to be $1,200. So what that means is I'm going to give you a call one day. And by the way, if you see my number on your caller ID, it's probably bad news. I don't call with good news, right? So sit down when you see my number, because I got some bad news. And I'm going to say, bad news, hot water heater went out, and it's going to be $1,200, and you'll see that reflected on your next statement. But I'm not going to ask for your advice on what to do, because I'm the expert. That's what I do. Now, if an owner isn't comfortable with that, if owner's like, I don't want that. I want to have a consult with the PM. That's fine. But then you need to set those expectations on the front end with the PM company to make sure that they're one of the companies that will say, yes, we will call you. And there are companies that'll do that. There are companies that'll say, hey, we'll call you before we spend a dime. Now, I don't think that's a good way to run a business, but if you as an owner, investor want a PM company like that, that's fine. Find that company and then just make sure that communication is happening on a regular basis.
So you mentioned it, you just said it too. I wrote down one word out of all this that I got and underlined it 3 times: communication. Communication. Yep. Communication seems, and that's across the board with any relationship you're building, husband and wife. I just got married, so husband and wife, communication. Like that's one of the first things that my pastor told me. Hey, you need to do that all the time. My dad told me communication, and building a relationship between a property manager and an investor. Communication seems to be like the number one thing that needs to happen. Sounds like from your end, but you talked about, and this is kind of a business. So Tom Olson's president of Good Success, and I run the operations for Good Success. So I oversee all the products happening, all the events going smoothly, getting people to the events, that kind of thing. So there are things that Tom says, hey, Josh, if this happens, you take care of it and then tell me about it. And hey, Josh, there's things that if this happens, just take care of it and don't tell me about it. But then Josh, there's these things that if this happens, I need you to tell me about it, and then we can decide how to take care of this. So it sounds like you even said that, there's a $500 threshold. Yeah. So if a hot water heater goes out, it has to be replaced. So is there any point where a property manager should call the investor
Yeah.
and say, hey,
Yeah.
this happened. I haven't done anything about it yet. I just need to know what you want me to do. So what's kind of the thresholds for, or the levels of that communication?
So for normal stuff, PM companies will have anywhere from they'll have a maintenance threshold. I've seen anywhere from $100, $300, $500, but there's always a couple exceptions in there. The exceptions are things like the furnace, because that's going to be more than $500, right? And the hot water heater, because that's going to be an exception. Now, what you don't want, and I can't imagine this happening, but you don't want your PM company to say, hey, just call and let you know we replaced the roof. I need 20 grand.
Yeah.
That's going to be something that we want to have a conversation with our property owners. And so when I'm having a conversation with a prospective owner and they're really kind of concerned about that, and gosh, Mark, I'm just not comfortable with that. You're telling me, I've had owners say, Mark, I'm giving you a lot of authority. And I say, yes, you are, because you're giving me your keys and you're giving me your tenant. I have to have that authority to make this work. If I don't have that authority, it's not going to work. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, Mr. Owner, don't work with the PM company. If you're not comfortable, don't step into that relationship of giving them that authority. But if you are comfortable, then you've got to step back and let them do what they hopefully do well.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's kind of transition. We got to move along. There's so much that we could talk about with property management, and you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to it. So we got to move this along a little bit. But let's get into switching tracks here, getting into gaps in property management. So things specifically from the property manager side. So maybe we are talking to the investors, but this isn't for the investor. For property managers, what are some things that you have come across in your 45 years of business in property management that you have noticed in property managers, some gaps that are missing? So maybe it's something they should be doing, maybe it's something they shouldn't be doing, or whatever. So from your point of view, what are some of the biggest gaps that are missing in property management today?
So it's funny, I've been asked that question in different aspects a lot lately, just because we're 40 years, right? So I hear the question, what makes you guys last for 40 years? How did you run a successful 40-year business? And I think it really comes down to ensuring that you don't have gaps in 3 different areas of your business. And area number 1 is your why, WHY. Like what's your purpose? Why do you want to be doing this? Why do you get out of bed every morning? What is it that motivates you to do whatever it is you're doing? And a lot of companies, they forget that why, or it's a very low level why, right? I want to make money. Well, that's fine now, but in 5, that will not keep you going for 40 years. 40 years, if I just want to make money, we'd have quit a long time ago. We'd have sold out a long time ago, right? So for us, our why, for example, our purpose statement is, my apologies.
Loud dog.
Yes, it is. Improving the lives of real estate investors and residents through property management solutions. Improving the lives of real estate. And that's not something we just throw up on a sidewall and refer to once a year. Like that, we talk about it all the time. Guys, this is the business we're in. We're in the improving lives business. Now, it just so happens we do it through real estate. Well, that's the business we're in. So when we do something as mundane as get that hot water fixed, that the tenant didn't have hot water, they call us and we send a repairman out and get that fixed. Like that's a little tiny thing, but that improved that guy's life for the day. Because I've got 4 kids. No hot water with my 4 kids is a big deal, right? So we want to do little things like that. And so we preach that to our team as well, guys. When we do something as simple as a lease renewal, right? So we negotiate a lease comes up for renewal, and we negotiate with the owner and the tenant, and that lease renewal lets the family stay in the same home for another year. And the kid in that family doesn't have to move to a new home in a new school and make new friends. Like if that doesn't send a chill down your spine, man, there's something wrong with you, right?
That's things that people don't think about though. And because they don't think about the why. They don't think about the why. Yeah. So that's one of those gaps, I think, that you want to make sure in whatever business you're in, you've got your why. Because when you get burned out, when you get tired, when you get frustrated, you got to come back to your why. Right. You got to come back to that. So that's number 1. I think the second thing that you need, or the second hole that can be there, is systems. Systems or process. What is going to be the system for property management? What's going to be the system for making the drinks at Starbucks or making the hamburgers at McDonald's? Whatever business you're in, you've got to have a replicatable process and system to keep inconsistency away. We want consistency because we can't manage 800 plus homes if we're inconsistent in our process. So that's number 2, is you've got to have a consistent process in place. That's a lot of the preaching I do to PM companies, is how to create systems around that idea, right? And then the third thing you need is people, the right people. We bought a competitor out a few years ago,
and we're sitting down at the closing table. So we're taking over her company, we're signing papers, and she looks across the table to me and she says, I never would have sold this business if I just could have hired and found better people. I thought, wow, that's a powerful statement. That's the reason she sold. She sold her business because she couldn't find anybody good to work for her. So you've got to have good people in place to continue to grow, to continue to scale. And I think with those three things, you've got your why, you've got your systems, and you've got your people. And if you think of like three concentric circles, right, where you think of the diagram where you've got three circles and they're kind of overlapping a little bit, what you're looking for in a business world is where those three things come together, because it can't be two of the three. If you've only got why, you've only got good people, but you don't have systems, it's only a matter of time before you'll be so frustrated because you can't make the process work that you'll quit. Or if you've only got processes and you've only got good people, eventually they'll get burned out because they don't have that why, and they'll walk away. So it can't be two out of the three. It's got to be all three. And when those three things come together and the concentric part of those three circles, that's what I think is going to make a successful business over time.
So my follow-up question to that was going to be, what are some time-tested principles since 1978 of property management that never change? And that sounds like those are three of them right there.
Those are three of them right there. Yeah, I think that I would just focus on the systems. Right? I mean, ensuring that there are systems in place for your business to continue on day after day after day with that, and getting those right people in place. Even the best system, like you have the best system in the world, but if you put the wrong person in there, the system won't help them.
Sure.
The best system will not fix the wrong person. So you've got to treat those three things differently.
Very interesting. So we talk about the why a lot, like that is very heavily talked in there. So I'm glad you addressed that. And yeah, that's awesome. So those are the three things, time-tested principles. And I think that can go with any business, not just property management.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
So if you're a wholesaler or you're a fix and flipper, these are three things that since 1978 have worked for Grace Property Management Company. So, okay, awesome. That's good stuff. So I got one more question here for you. We're going to have to wrap this up here soon. We actually lost the internet connection halfway through the podcast, so we had to reboot and get back into it, but we're running out of time here. But it's been a great podcast. We could go deep into each one of those three principles that we talked about, how to find right people and putting them in the right place, and then getting systems and processes set up in the right direction, and then also your why. We could spend all day on that. But we got one more question, and then we're going to jump into the last two that we ask every single interviewee that we get on this show here. So for locating and acquiring rentals, let's talk to the investors right now. So somebody that wants to own the asset, buy and hold, what are some of your best strategies that you have found for locating and acquiring good rental properties?
So the best strategy that I know of that I just don't hear anybody talking about is calling a company like us, calling a PM company and saying, hey, I'm a real estate investor. I'm looking to buy some rental properties. Do you guys have anything in your portfolio coming for sale? Because if they do that, I can just about promise that PM company will find a deal for them.
Sure.
Because put yourself in my place for a minute, right? I'm a PM guy, and let's pretend one of my owner clients calls me and says, hey, Mark, appreciate working with you, but we've decided to sell the house. Now they may use us to sell the property, or they may not. They may use another outside agent. But what I want, selfishly, is I want to retain the management of that property.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I hate to lose a good property.
Yeah.
So if you called me today and you said, Mark, we're looking at trying to buy a rental property. Do you have any ideas? I'd be like, yeah, you bet I can find you one, because I'm going to go to that group of owners who told me they've been thinking about selling. And I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Owner, Miss Owner, I think I got a buyer for you. And now hopefully I can kind of keep the deal in-house, so to speak, and I can hopefully keep the management. So I'm going to work real hard to make that transaction work, because I want to keep the management of the property. So if you as an investor, if you want to buy some properties, call every PM company in town. Tell them you're looking to buy a property, because they're probably going to give you one that's already occupied, already got a tenant in place, there's no turnover, and you've already maybe got PM services in place. And so it's the best of all worlds, but nobody does that. We never get calls like that. Nobody ever calls us to ask for that. If they would, by all means, we could absolutely. And any PM company is the same thing. They could because they can match up. They've got the sellers. We've already got all the sellers. I've got 800 people, right? 800 plus doors. At any point in time, a lot of them want to sell. So our goal is we're trying to find buyers. So those buyers just need to start reaching out to PM companies. And if they don't have any, give them your number. they'll put you on the list, and I bet they'll give you a call.
Interesting. So yeah, I've never heard that strategy before. I'm sure people do it, but I've never heard it actually talked about. So, but it's a win-win for everybody because, like you said, you have this person wants to sell, so they're gonna sell it. Then you have this person wants to buy an asset, and then you got you in the middle. You could connect the dots, and it's
because most of the time that seller isn't going to sell until the tenant moves.
Sure.
Right? They're not going to sell it tenant occupied because it's a hassle. It's harder to do. So that's the best case scenario for the seller, because now they can sell. They don't have to wait for the tenant to move. They can just sell now.
Very interesting. That's a good strategy. And like you said, if the property's already occupied, then that's almost like a turnkey property. Like That's a no-brainer right there.
Yes.
So you talked about that people do sell. Do you have that those people sell pretty often? Are they looking to sell their assets pretty often? You said that not hardly anybody's doing this strategy. So would it be worth the call?
A percentage of folks are always looking to sell.
Okay.
Right. So PM companies, any PM company, and I'm just guessing here, at any point in time is going to have at least 5% of their clients who are thinking about selling, interested in selling.
Gotcha. Because
an owner will say, I'd like to sell, but I just can't right now. So even in the back of their mind, that PM company knows which of their clients are interested in selling.
Sure. Very interesting. So then from maybe this is something you're not able to share, but from your point of view, do you guys keep a list, like an ongoing list of people that are interested in selling, maybe thinking about selling, and then people that are interested in buying, so that you can kind of like a buyer's list, you compare the two?
Yeah, we probably should, but no, we don't kind of have that ongoing list, but we just kind of know, those clients that have told us, hey, if when the market turns, I'd like to sell, or always thinking about it. So we probably should be more proactive with that, but we're not.
Sure. You should do that.
After this podcast, I think I will.
Awesome. So I'm glad I gave you a good idea there. All right. Well, cool. So that's a strategy that never heard of that talked about. Again, I'm sure people are doing that, but that's not something that a lot of people, like you even said, that's not something that a lot of people are doing. There's plenty of property management companies out there. So even if
you hear about you hear about yellow letters or what?
Yeah.
Forget that stuff. You don't need to go knock on doors. You don't need to send yellow letters. Google every PM company in your city and start calling them. That is the easiest way, and it'll be the most effective way to find some rental properties to buy.
So I even wonder, and I'm sure Tom, if he was here, he would have a really good opinion on this, but I'm even thinking, like, for a turnkey provider, would it be good for them to call a property management company to get an asset under, like it's, a seller's wanting to sell, so then this turnkey provider is going to buy it, and then I don't know.
Yeah,
just a thought.
All sorts of options. But that's what buyers and agents need to keep that in mind. Don't just overlook PM companies, because PM companies are sitting on all this inventory. Sure. They're sitting on it. They manage it. They know it. So we need to treat them as a resource.
Absolutely. Well, very cool. We appreciate you sharing that with us. That's a really good nugget there. So we're going to have to wrap this up, but we got 2 more questions here that we're going to wrap up the show with. We appreciate you jumping on. We look forward to having you back soon, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in February at the Mastermind there in Dallas. So these are 2 questions that we ask every single interviewee that we get on the show here. Very interesting topics to listen to. So I'm excited to hear about this one. So good success. You know about us pretty well. I believe that you heard Tom's talk on Be a Conduit, Not a Bucket at the Think Realty event in Atlanta. And I know that you had talked to him about it, but you know us a little bit. So good success means a lot to us, came from Joshua 1:8, talks about the type of success. And you even talked about how, the why, it's not always money. If money's your driving why, then that could go away very easily. So that's one thing. We have a banner right here. You can't see it, but it says, if your why is big enough, your what will take care of itself. And so we talk about that a lot, and that means a lot to us at Good Success. So from your point of view, when you hear the term good success, what does that mean to you? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I think for me, when I think good success, what I try to think of is being aware of the major elements of anybody's life, right? And paying attention equally to those elements. So what I mean by that is, I think it's very easy as we progress through life of over-focusing on one particular element of our life for that time in our life at the detriment of the other areas. So we've got, what I typically refer to as the 5 F's or the 6 F's of life. You've got faith, but in my mind, and I'm a believer, right? I'm a Christian, but it doesn't end there, right? I mean, there's a reason that God said in Genesis 1, it's not good for man to be alone, right? So you can't say, well, it's just me and God. It's just God. Well, it's not just God, because there's a whole lot of other stuff after that, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got to have vocation. God created vocation type of a thing. So you've got your faith, you've got family, you've got your fitness. You got to make sure that you're healthy. You've got your finances. That's a big part of who we are. So faith, family, fitness, finances. I think fun comes into it, or lifestyle. Are you enjoying yourself,
living life? Yeah,
and then vocation. Exactly. So so the faith, family, fitness, finances, fun, and vocation. And I could go on those things for a long time, which I won't do. Sure. But I think you can make a logical argument. You can make a biblical argument that every one of those things are the necessary elements of every one of us. And when you overlook one of those elements, you pay the price. Or if you overfocus on one of those elements, you pay the price, right? We can all get that with finances, right? If anybody overfocuses on money, it becomes all about the money. We all know how that story is going to end. Mm-hmm. But if you ignore finances, the story is going to end just as poorly for that aspect, that individual. So I think the challenge for me is to make sure that I'm continually focusing on all those things, because it's so easy to get sucked into one. It's so easy to get sucked into vocation, and man, I love my job, and this is my calling, and this is my work. And you kind of forget about your family. I got 4 little monkeys running around the house, and I'm coaching basketball for 3 of the 4 of them right now. Yeah. That's fun. I got to keep doing that, because it's easy to get focused on different things. So good success for me means staying properly focused on each of those areas of me.
That's awesome. I love that. I've actually never heard that before. I don't know, Emily, you're shaking your head no too. So I love that. Good success. Love it. So then you got to leave our audience with one thing, whether that's a quote, a thought, piece of advice, maybe it's a book you've read. One thing you got to leave the audience with, what would that be?
So when I talk to folks, I usually end with this. I say, and it's true, I read a Harvard business study a few years ago, and the topic of the study was, what are the top characteristics of high achievers? I mean, let's study all the high achievers and what things do they do that the rest of us don't do. And so they rated all these factors. There's everything you can think of. What's their GPA? How early do they wake up in the morning? How many books do they read? What do they do? And some of the stuff was not surprising. Work ethic's a big deal, of course. But what surprised me was the number one highest rated characteristic of high achievers was speed of implementation. Speed of implementation. So that means what high achievers do that everybody else doesn't do is when they get an idea, they go. They're not sitting around thinking about it, and they're not planning it out, mapping it out, and doing a business model. They just go. And so I think that I've tried to adopt that as well, right? I mean, and it's been very, very effective. And when I see the people around me that I think are the most effective and most successful, that characteristic is often there. So to those individuals, if you're thinking about buying a piece of real estate, man, don't wait. Get out there and buy the real estate. Get it done. If you're thinking about starting a business, start the silly business. I was talking to a guy just the other day about this, and I said, we've been talking for like a month, and I said, so what have you done? He's like, hey, I made great strides. I said, well, great. What'd you do? It's like, I decided to write a business plan. Like, it's taken a month and you decided to start writing a business plan. Come on, you're driving me crazy. Yeah. Right? Just go. I've never written a business plan in my life. Yeah. Just go. So that speed of implementation, I think, is what I hope people will remember.
And another term for that could be taking action.
Taking action.
Action. We actually, so we're recording this on Friday, and the podcast that went out today was Tom was talking about his steps for financial freedom. So he achieved financial freedom at the age of 40, and the podcast was about how he did that and the things he took action on. And I don't remember the order of what it was, but there were these steps, and the last one was take action. And you could have all these things, everything that you just talked about in this podcast. Everybody could absorb that, and it could be in your mind, but if you don't take action on it, it's worthless. So implementation is the word you use. I like that a lot. So speed of implementation. Awesome. I totally concur with that. Love that. All right, so that is going to do it for today's episode. Mark, I appreciate you being on. You shared a lot of awesome nuggets. I hope you guys, if you're listening right now, you're taking notes. If you're driving on the car, make sure you pull over and take some notes on this podcast. If not, then hopefully we'll have a show notes pretty soon. You guys can go take a look at that. So, Mark, thanks for being on. We look forward to having you back soon, and again, meeting you maybe in February at the Mastermind.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, so that is going to do it for today's episode. We appreciate you guys jumping on and listening. If you haven't already, actually, you know what, Mark? I'm going to pause right there. If somebody wanted to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to do that? And then also talk about your, I know you said you do teaching for property management. How can somebody find out more about that?
Yeah, so our property management company, where we provide property management services, the best way to contact us is our website, which is RENT, rentgrace.com. That's the best way to reach us that way. And for the property management coaching and things I do, the best way to reach me is probably just through LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Otherwise, they can also reach me just through that Rent Grace website. My contact information is on there.
Okay. Awesome. So we'll make sure to link that below if you guys are on Facebook Premiere right now. If you're not, if you're listening to the podcast on the podcast platform, just go to rentgrace.com. Super easy URL to type into your browser there. And Mark said that you can reach him that way as well. So thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. I just want to make sure we got that there because there's so much value that you provided on this, and we want to make sure that we can provide value back to you in some way. So great stuff. So if you guys haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the Good Success Podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, all the podcast platforms. Just look us up, search Good Success, and you'll find us there. Leave us a review if you're able to. We would love to hear your thoughts on these podcasts. And if there's anybody that you would like to hear be a guest on the show, just email podcast@goodsuccess.com, and we would love to check that out. And then if you haven't already, make sure you have picked up the Active Turnkey book, The Best Way to Buy Rentals, written by Tom Olson himself, and he is giving this away for free. All you got to do is go to atkbook.com. Super easy URL. Again, it's not Good Success. Well, you go to goodsuccess.com/atkbook, but super easy is atkbook.com to pick this up for free. All you got to do is cover shipping costs, and Tom's paying for the book out of his pocket. A lot of awesome information here. Talk about financial freedom, talk about the 5 wealth generators and safer with more controls, and then the Active Turnkey program. So make sure you take advantage of that. Pick that up. He's signing copies right now. So some great stuff. And then the Good Success Mastermind coming up November 8, 9, and 10 is the next one. So it's next week. But the next event is February 6, 7, and 8. You could check it out at goodsuccess.com/mastermind. Fill out the application there. You'll talk to either myself or Tom. We'll see if it's a good fit for you and a good fit for us. We talked about that for property management companies and investors. So same thing for us. We're going to make sure it's a good fit for us and for you. So goodsuccess.com/mastermind is where you can check us out there. Again, fill out the application and we'll look forward to talking to you. And then early bird pricing for the Community Go-Giver event is already on sale. Go to communitygogiver.com. We have a list right now. We have our headline speakers, which is Tom Olson, Jim Ingersoll, Aaron Chapman with Security National Mortgage. That's a new one. And then Jim Ingersoll and Jeffrey Taylor is going to be there. So we're excited. We got 3 of the originals coming back, and then Aaron Chapman's being added onto that. Very, very awesome lineup. You guys aren't going to want to miss that. Save a couple $100. Go to communitygogiver.com to purchase the tickets now. That's going to do it for today's episode. We appreciate you guys jumping on and listening. And remember to be a conduit and not a bucket, and work to have to give. Catch you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for listening to this Good Success Podcast episode. Make sure to subscribe to us. We're on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Anchor, or Spotify, any one of those platforms, however you like to listen to your podcast. Make sure you subscribe. And just a quick reminder to go pick up your free copy of the Active Turnkey book. It's absolutely free. Just cover the shipping costs and we'll pay for the book. Just head over to goodsuccess.com/ATKbook. Again, that's goodsuccess.com/ATKbook. And you can pick up the book there. So make sure you go do that. Thank you for listening. And remember to be a conduit, not a bucket.